Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I am 71 male, recently diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. According to the doctor, my chances of surviving are quite low. I am a widower with 3 adult children. When we were younger, my wife and I adopted 3 children, since we were both sterile. My daughters, Laura 27 female and Danny 26 female, live in their respective homes, while my son Abel 23 male lives with me. 3 weeks ago, Laura and Danny visited me in the hospital. I had not seen them for some years now, and because I was heavily sedated, I kept drifting all while we were having a conversation. Due to my semi-conscious state, I let it slip out that my son Abel is the sole beneficiary of my will. Their reaction was unpleasantly horrible, but I can't dwell much on it, since I slept off in the middle of their charade. My wife and I legally adopted all our children when they were still babies. Before we adopted them, we vowed to share with them whatever we could find about their biological parents, as we planned on being open about their adoption. I established contacts with the biological parents of all our children, and they connected with their birth parents. This happened when Laura and Danny were still in their preteens. Witnessing their excitement and joy in reconnecting with their birth parents, I felt fulfilled as a father, and I felt like we were all going to be one big blended family, especially as I had lost my wife a few months back. But it wasn't what went down. Laura and Danny both applied for the same college located in the city their birth parents resided. I didn't think much of it at first, but helped them pay for their first year in college. That was the last year I saw my daughters. I called frequently at first, but the reception was not what I expected, and they always turned down requests to meet for the holidays because they already made plans with their biological families and didn't want to disappoint them. They asked that I stopped my frequent calls because it made them awkward when they were with their biological families. I respected their wishes, although their actions broke my heart. I took it as part of life and wished them well with their biological family. It didn't stop me from calling them to check on them, though their coldness and the disconnect I felt whenever they took my calls were discouraging. I was practically ignored by my daughters at Laura's wedding. I was treated as a guest who was not related to them. The first time I fell sick, they never came to see me, even though Abel called them and disclosed my condition. Against my wishes. They only came after my condition worsened, which is present, and I do not know how I feel about their visit. Now Abel tells me that they called him and reported my favoritism, accusing me of being a partial father for not thinking about them. Laura and Danny visited again, this time asking that I liquidate my properties. They insisted that I sell my house and car and divide my profit into 3 equal parts. And when I refused to do this, they called me an unfair person for wanting to give everything to Abel when they both had families to take care of and were paying off some loans. I got upset with their demands and asked them to meet their biological families for money. Abel is the only child that stayed with me to date. Although he met with his birth parents, he never left my side. We have evolved from father and son to close friends, and he has been a blessing to me, especially now that I'm losing to cancer. This is my way of showing my gratitude. My daughters think I'm a bad father for choosing to give him everything, since they also need money. I don't have much, just my house and my car, and I feel my son deserves it all. Am I the a-hole for doing this? Update. I read your contributions and shared them with Abel. I will not include Laura and Danny in my will. I told them that since they do not see me as their father, and I respected that, they should reserve their angst for those whom they see as their parents. I also warned them to never come back and asked the hospital to bar them from seeing me. I will be leaving the hospital soon, since Abel is converting my house into a hospice, since I'm getting worse by the second. In all of these, I am grateful for having a son like Abel. I am glad I have one child who treats me right. I may not see your comments after now, since I will be heavily sedated from now on. Thanks for your comments and suggestions. Goodbye to you all. You're not the a-hole for giving everything you owe to Abel, your son. Laura and Danny are the a-holes because they've made it very clear to you that you're not their father. You're not even family to them. The only thing they see you as is a man who provides for them financially and nothing more. You were good to them and even found their birth parents for them. They should treat you the same way they treat their birth parents, especially since you take care of their responsibilities as your own. The fact that at the end of the day, all they wanted was your money just confirmed that they have no love for you. I wish you well, OP. I'm glad you have a son like Abel to keep you company during the rest of your days. Story 2. Yesterday, a couple of co-workers and myself were cleaning out office supplies. We found an old calendar from 2016. We decided to put it up at the desk of our manager as a prank to fool our boss into getting his days confused. The idea of this was just to see if he would mix up dates when conversing with us. We sit close to his area. Today, I found out that said boss used the calendar to choose a date and buy tickets to a game. They were expensive tickets. I heard the whole package was $3,000, and they included a suite, drinks, food, etc. for a large group of people. After some comments made by the boss about making the purchase, my coworker, who was also involved in the prank, found out that our manager had been using the 2016 calendar to choose the date for the day he wanted. Well, of course, the day of the actual game is different, and he ended up getting tickets to a different game and day than he expected. Now he's trying to get a refund. However, since it was done through an online reseller, that is a challenge that may not happen. When my coworker came clean to him about the prank itself, our manager was pretty upset at the time as it just happened. Later, I found out from home and I called him to explain, but he cut me off and said I was busy at the time. I feel awful about it because we were involved and the amount of money that he spent on them. None of this would have happened if we had not put up the older calendar, which was completely avoidable. At the same time, our manager is the one who actually purchased and ordered the tickets and spent thousands of dollars on the wrong day, with multiple ways to check the day and date. We are also concerned about how hurt he is, as we meant no malice in doing this. But that is outside of his perspective and we believe he's very upset about it. Given the repercussions of this, I have to ask, am I the a-hole for putting this calendar up to fool our boss? You're the a-hole, OP. Things going sideways and unexpected consequences are inherent in practical jokes. That's one of the reasons most people don't play them on others. Calendars are used to schedule things. I can't think of much in a workplace that wouldn't be affected by scheduling. So even if it hadn't turned out the way it did, why would you ever think it's clever to mess with the success of your employer? You wanted to laugh at someone else's expense and now find the debt is on you. You're responsible for the consequences of your actions even if you weren't clever enough to anticipate them. Make it right. Now for some comments. You are the a-hole. I think the best course of action you and your coworkers can do is to pull money together and pay your boss the amount he lost. It's the only thing y'all can do to remedy the situation because at the end of the day, he's still your boss and he can make your work life a living hell if you wanted to. You're the a-hole. This could have been worse as it could have been a work thing, but you ruined his time for what? Especially the a-hole for blaming him for not checking the dates. Why would he ever think his desk calendar was out of date? Like he should predict you guys being a-holes? That level of trying to pass off blame is really shitty. Cough up the money, play stupid games. Oh, the agony I feel for you. I mean, you are the a-hole, I think. Unless the year on the calendar was visible to him. Though this was maybe the worst case scenario, so I don't really like saying you're an a-hole, but I think you have to be the a-hole here. The goal was for him to mess up his dates and yeah, he messed up his dates. He could have used another means of checking the date, but a calendar is a valid method of doing that and you expected him to use it. So you probably could have thought of the possibility he may mess up something important. I really feel for you though. You didn't mean for this to happen and it was done in good spirit. I don't know if anyone views it differently. Please change my mind, because I feel like an a-hole myself writing this. Story 3. I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. When I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray, I walked by the backside and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point, I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, Hers strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took their checks and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later, Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what virgin on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She stared blankly at me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie, and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's law, she's correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me, and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here. I would like some perspective on this and if I'm the a-hole here. Now for some comments. You are the a-hole. I've spent most of my working years in food service and half of that time has been in management. If I was your manager, I would have fired you on the spot. While I agree that pregnant women shouldn't be drinking, you never change a customer's order without their consent. If you had an issue with her drinking, you should have taken it to your manager and let her deal with the situation. You are the a-hole. If you don't want to serve her, don't serve her, but don't try to trick her for her own good. You would not be the a-hole if you had told her what you heard and said you didn't feel comfortable serving her alcohol. You also could have cut them all off once you saw that they were intoxicated. That would be actually living up to your convictions and dealing with the consequences. She might not be pregnant even if you think it looks obvious that she is. She could be waiting to give birth to a stillborn. She could have a metabolic disorder that gives her huge stomach distension. She could be fat and carry it in her stomach. She could have had a laparoscopic surgery that included gas to inflate her abdomen. She could have given birth a few days ago, and her stomach is not back to normal. The thing is that a customer isn't obligated and doesn't want to give you their medical history to justify their dietary choices. Besides, one drink in late pregnancy is not harmful. It's much worse drinking the stages when you wouldn't be able to guess just by looking. Maybe the woman in OP's story is waiting an abortion appointment, or maybe she's not even pregnant at all and you overheard some random conversation and leapt to conclusions.